Okay students, today we'll start calorimetry. Now in fact calorimetry means measurement of heat. So the calculation of heat, transfer of heat from one substance to another substance, how much heat is transferred, what will be the rise in temperature or what will be the fall in temperature, this all type of calculations is done in calorimetry. Now before that, first of all we should understand the difference between heat and temperature. Now what is heat? Heat is the internal energy of the molecules due to the motion and attractive forces. So heat is the total internal energy of the molecules due to the motion and the attractive forces. You know that every molecules, there is an attractive force between them. There are potential energy, there are kinetic energy due to their vibrations. So this total energy that is present in a body due to their particles, that's molecules, that is called heat. Whereas temperature is the degree of hotness or coldness of a body. That means how hot or how cold a body is, we can understand by the temperature. And temperature actually depends upon the average kinetic energy of the molecules. So that means higher the movement, higher the kinetic energy in a molecules, higher will be the temperature. SI unit of heat is joule and SI unit of temperature, it's Kelvin. Now two bodies having same quantity of heat may differ in temperature. So both the body having a same quantity of heat but their temperature may vary. And similarly, two bodies at the same temperature may differ in quantity of heat contained in them. So that is what you have to understand here, the difference between heat and temperature. Now say, for example, say if I take water, an example, and say copper. Now suppose I took 1 gram of water, 1 gram, I took copper, also 1 gram. Now suppose the temperature of this water is 10 degrees Celsius and the temperature of the copper is also 10 degrees Celsius. Now if I heat this water and copper to same extent, that means suppose I am applying say 4.2 joule of heat to water and I am also applying 4.2 joule of heat to copper. So you can understand that when I am supplying same amount of heat to water and same amount of heat to copper, both at same temperature, you will find that copper is becoming more hot compared to water. You know why? The temperature of the water will just become 11 degrees Celsius. That means its temperature will just rise by 1 degree Celsius. Whereas the temperature of the copper will be more or less equal to 100 degrees Celsius. That means 10 times at least. Whereas we have applied same amount of heat to both. Now the reason is, it is that average kinetic energy of the molecules. So as you know, temperature depends on the average kinetic energy of the molecules. So what is happening when I am heating water and copper? The molecules of the copper start vibrating more rapidly as compared to water. And therefore the average kinetic energy of copper is more than the average kinetic energy of the molecules of the water. And therefore the temperature of copper is rising to a greater extent compared to that of water. So you can understand, we have taken both 10 degrees Celsius water 10 degrees Celsius copper, 1 gram of water, 1 gram of copper. I am heating same extent to both, but you know that copper becomes more hot quickly because its temperature rises rapidly. And why the temperature rises rapidly? Because its kinetic energy increased rapidly. That means if you compare the molecules of water and molecules of copper, the molecules of water is vibrating less rapidly, but the molecules of copper is vibrating more rapidly, and hence its kinetic energy is greater than compared to the molecules of the water, and therefore the temperature of copper is increasing rapidly. So that is the main concept of heat and temperature. Heat is the total energy present in the body, and the temperature is the degree of hotness or coldness of a body. And temperature depends upon the average kinetic energy, means greater the kinetic energy of the molecules, higher will be the temperature. So I am applying same amount of heat to both, but the kinetic energy of the molecules of the copper is increasing more, and therefore its temperature is more. Okay, understand? So this is a very important concept to understand. Okay, now as we have seen that SI unit of heat, that is joule, but common units we generally use calorie and kilocalorie. So these definitions you can find in your book. What is calorie? 1 calorie is how much? 1 calorie, it is the amount of heat required to increase the temperature of 1 gram of water from 14.5 degrees Celsius to 15.5 degrees Celsius. So that means, suppose I have taken 1 gram of water and this initial temperature of water is 14.5 degrees Celsius. Now I am heating, and now if I give 1 calorie of heat, so that means if the temperature of the water is changing from 14.5 to 15.5 degrees Celsius, then the amount of heat that I have supplied, that is called 1 calorie. Okay. Now 14.5 to 15.5 means you can understand there is a rise in temperature of 1 degree Celsius. So you can see it is the amount of heat required to increase the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. But instead of directly writing 1 degree Celsius, nowadays we write what? 14.5 to 15.5, because you know the water has pretty much non-uniform expansion. So it's not uniform. So it's at every different temperature it behaves different. So this is to maintain an uniformity about the value of calorie. We have seen that between 14.5 to 15.5 the expansion of water is pretty much uniform. So therefore, instead of writing directly 1 degree Celsius, we say 14.5 to 15.5 degrees Celsius. So that is 1 calorie. Understand? So again, 1 calorie means it is the amount of heat required to increase the temperature of 1 gram of water from 14.5 degrees Celsius to 15.5 degrees Celsius. Okay. And what is 1 kilocalorie? 1 kilocalorie is same. Instead of 1 gram, we take 1 kg of water. So that means it is the amount of heat required to convert 1 kg of water from 14.5 degrees Celsius to 15.5 degree Celsius. So that is 1 kilocalorie. And 1 calorie is, approximately it is equals to 4.2 joule. Okay, to be precise, it is in fact 4.186. So, but we Generally take 4.2 joule. 1 kilocalorie means 4200 joule, and also 1 kilocalorie means what? 1000 calorie. Okay, so these are some common units of heat. Okay. Okay, next is heat capacity of a substance. Now, heat capacity, it is the amount of heat required to increase the temperature of a given mass of a substance by 1 degree Celsius. So you can understand heat capacity means the capacity to absorb heat, how much heat is required to increase the temperature of the given substance by 1 degree Celsius. It is denoted by, say, the letter C dash. That means what? Suppose I have 1 gram of water and the temperature is 10 degrees Celsius. Then I have 2 gram of water. The temperature is same, 10 degrees Celsius. If I take, say, 10 gram of water, again the temperature is 10 degrees Celsius. And if I take 1000 gram of water, that is 1 kg. And this is also the temperature is 10 degree Celsius. Okay. Now I want to change the temperature of this water, say 1 gram, 2 gram or 10 gram and 1000 gram separately. I want to increase everybody's temperature from 10 degrees Celsius, say 11 degrees Celsius. Say that means I want to raise the temperature by 1 degree Celsius. Then you can understand that different quantity of heat will be required. Everybody is at 10 degree, 10 degree, 10 degree, 10 degree. But you know that if you take a small bowl of water and if you heat it, you can see that it reaches to boiling point very quickly, right? But if you take a big container of water and you want to boil that water, you have seen that it takes much longer time. So from this, what can I say? That this water, 1 gram of water will reach from 10 to 11 much quickly compared to this. 2 gram of water will take more time. 10 gram of water will take further more time. And 1000 gram of water will also take further more time. So therefore I can say that heat capacity of 1000 gram of water is greater than the heat capacity of 10 gram of water. Heat capacity of 10 gram of water is greater than the heat capacity of 2 gram of water. Heat capacity of 2 gram of water is greater than the heat capacity of 1 gram of water. Okay. Now see, for 1 gram of water, for converting 10 degrees Celsius to 11 degrees Celsius, I have to give approximately 4.2 joule of heat. And then this 1 gram of water will convert into 1 gram of water at 10 degrees Celsius will convert into 11 degree Celsius. When I heat this 2 gram of water and want to convert from 10 degrees Celsius to 11 degrees Celsius, you can understand how much I have to give. I have to give 8.4 joule of heat, and then its temperature will reach to 11 degree Celsius. Again, when I have to convert this 10 gram of water to 11 degrees Celsius, then in this case I have to supply in fact 42 joule of heat to convert into 11 degrees Celsius. And similarly, when I have to convert 1000 gram of water from 10 degrees Celsius to 11 degrees Celsius, I have to give 4200 joule of heat then only it will convert into 11 degrees Celsius. So understand? So you can see different amount of heat is required, although the temperature in every case is reached, converted from 10 degree to 11 degree, 1 degree, 1 degree. But since the mass is different, the heat absorbed is different for the same rise in temperature. So now from this I can say, try to understand that heat capacity of 1 gram of water is 4.2 joule per degree Celsius. Understand? So that means for converting 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius, I have to give 4.2 joule. So heat capacity of 1 gram of water is 4.2 joule. Similarly, heat capacity of 2 gram of water is 8.4 joule per degree Celsius. Understand? Heat capacity of 2 gram of water is 8.4 joule per degree Celsius. Similarly, heat capacity of 10 gram of water is how much? 42 joule per degree Celsius. And again, heat capacity of 1000 gram of water is how much? 4200 joule per degree Celsius. So you can understand all these are heat capacity of water, but it is heat capacity of different mass of water, because heat capacity depends upon mass. Greater the mass, more is the heat capacity. So 1 gram of water requires less heat compared to 2 gram of water to raise its temperature by 1 degree Celsius. So this is about heat capacity. So from here we can conclude that heat capacity is not constant. Heat capacity depends upon mass. You can see all these are heat capacity of water, but this is heat capacity of 1 gram of water, this is heat capacity of 2 gram of water, this is heat capacity of 10 gram of water, and this is heat capacity of 1000 gram of water. So like this, every substance has a heat capacity. So that is heat capacity. It is the amount of heat required to increase the temperature of a given mass of a substance by 1 degree Celsius. Okay. Now see. Now suppose for a given mass, substance let Q joule of heat is supplied to a substance and there is a rise in temperature of say delta T. So delta means change in temperature. So rise in temperature is delta T. How much heat we have supplied to that substance? We have supplied Q joule of heat to a substance. And how much is the rise in temperature? The rise in temperature is delta T. Okay, now look here. When rise in temperature is delta T, then heat absorbed by the substance is how much? Q. Then when the rise in temperature is 1 degree Celsius, okay, when the rise in temperature was delta T degree Celsius, then the heat absorbed was Q joule. Similarly, when the rising temperature will be 1 degree Celsius, then the heat supplied will be how much? Q by delta T, and that is joule per degree Celsius. Understand? So now we can see that this is the formula for finding the heat capacity, because what you have seen, it is the amount of heat required to increase the temperature of a given mass of substance by 1 degree Celsius. So when the rising temperature was delta T, then heat absorbed is Q joule. Then when the rising temperature will be 1 degree Celsius, then how much will be the heat absorbed? Q by delta T. So finally we can say that heat capacity, that is C dash, is always equals to total heat, that is Q, by rising temperature, and now delta T means rise or fall in temperature. Okay, so that is delta T. So finally we can say formula is C dash equals to Q by delta T. Okay, and the SI unit will be joule per Kelvin, but commonly we write it as joule per degree Celsius. Understand? So remember, when they ask you SI unit, you should give in Kelvin. Okay, joule per Kelvin. So because heat is joule and temperature is Kelvin, so joule per Kelvin, and delta T means rise or fall in temperature. So you can understand, if heat is absorbed, then there will be a rise in temperature of 1 degree Celsius, and if heat is released, then there will be a fall in temperature of 1 degree Celsius. So C dash equals to Q by delta T. Okay, understand? So this is about heat capacity. Okay. Okay, now is specific heat capacity. Now specific heat capacity means it is a specific, you can understand. Previously, just now we have seen what is heat capacity. And if you remember that heat capacity, it is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of a given mass of a substance by 1 degree. That was heat capacity. It can be any mass. You have seen heat capacity, heat capacity of 1 gram of water is 4.2 joule per degree Celsius. Heat capacity of 2 gram of water was 8.4 joule per degree Celsius. Heat capacity of 10 gram of water was how much? 42 joule per degree Celsius. And heat capacity of 1000 gram means 1 kg, right? 1 kg of water is how much? 4200 joule per degree Celsius. So that was heat capacity. So it was not constant because it depended upon mass. But specific heat capacity means heat capacity which is specific, which is constant. In fact, it is the heat capacity, specific heat capacity is the heat capacity of unit mass of the substance. And unit mass means either 1 gram or 1 kg. So heat capacity may change, depend upon mass, but specific heat capacity will not change, because specific heat capacity actually means it is the heat capacity of unit mass. And unit mass means if I take in CGS it will be 1 gram, and if I take in SI it will be 1 kg. So simply from here we can say that specific heat capacity of water is how much? 4.2 joule per gram degree Celsius. I will talk about the unit later on. And or specific heat capacity of water is also 4200 joule per kg degree Celsius. So if you take SI unit, it is 4200. So specific heat capacity of water is always 4.2 joule per gram degree Celsius, or it is 4200 joule per kg degree Celsius. So you can understand, it is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of unit mass of a substance by 1 degree Celsius. And what is the unit? Unit means 1. So unit mass means either 1 gram or 1 kg. So hence you can say that specific heat capacity actually means it is the heat capacity of the substance of unit mass. Okay. Okay, now see, suppose m gram of a substance absorbs q joule of heat, and there is a rise in temperature. Okay, rise in temperature of delta T. So understand, there is a substance whose mass is m gram. How much heat is supplied to that substance? How much heat? Q joule of heat. And naturally, if Q joule of heat is supplied to this m gram, then there will be a rise in temperature. Then how much is the rise in temperature? Delta T. Okay. Now see, for again m gram, for that same substance, m gram of a substance. Now if it absorb 1 joule of heat, instead of Q joule, it will absorb 1 joule. Then what will be the rise in temperature? Okay, in fact, I am writing it in a different way. Suppose m gram of a substance and there is a rise in temperature of delta T, and heat absorbed is how much? Heat absorbed is Q joule. Okay, so the mass of the substance is m gram, and how much is the rise in temperature? Delta T, and how much is the heat absorbed? That is Q joule. Okay, now again for m gram of a substance, now if there is a rise in temperature of 1 degree Celsius, then heat absorbed, okay, then heat absorbed will be how much? In that case, heat absorbed will be Q by delta T, right? So if the rising temperature is delta T, heat absorbed is Q joule, and if the rising temperature is 1 degree Celsius, then the heat absorbed will be Q by delta. Now how much was the mass? M gram. So m gram, rising temperature 1 degree, heat absorbed is Q by delta T. Now instead of m gram, if I take 1 gram of a substance, and then there is a rise in temperature of 1 degree Celsius, then heat absorbed is how much? It will be naturally Q by m into delta T. So understand, because if m gram heat absorbed is Q by delta, then for 1 gram heat absorbed will be Q by m into delta. Okay, m gram is this, then 1 gram will be by m. So finally you can say this is what? Unit mass, and this is how much? The rise in temperature. Now if you see the definition, what is specific heat capacity? It is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of unit mass of a substance by how much? By 1 degree Celsius. So finally we can say that therefore specific heat capacity, that is C, is equal to total heat, that is Q, by mass, that is M, into rise or fall in temperature, so that is delta T. Okay, simply we can say C is equal to Q by M into delta T. So this is the formula for specific heat capacity. So understand, so specific heat capacity is actually equals to total heat by mass into rise or fall in temperature. Okay. Okay. Now, what are the factors on which heat absorbed or released by a substance depends? Now, just now we have seen the that formula of specific heat capacity, and that was C equals to Q by M into delta T, right? So that was the formula for specific heat capacity, C equals to Q by M into delta T. So from this we can get that Q equals to M into C into delta T. So that means heat is equal to mass into specific heat capacity into rise or fall in temperature. So these are the main three factors on which heat absorbed or released by a substance depends. So from here we can say that factors on which heat absorbed or released by a substance depends on this. So first is, it is directly proportional to mass. So we can understand, greater the mass, greater will be the heat absorbed. Second is directly proportional to the rise or fall in temperature. So that means Q is directly proportional to delta T. Okay. And third, it depends upon the material of the substance, which is expressed in terms of specific heat capacity. So this specific heat capacity is a is an unique features of the substance. So every substance have a different specific heat capacity. So that means it depends upon the material. Water has a different specific heat capacity, copper has a different specific heat capacity, iron has a different specific heat capacity. So every substance have a different specific heat capacity on which this heat absorbed also depends. So from here we can say that combining, now if I combine 1 and 2, I get Q is directly proportional to M into delta T, right? Q is directly proportional to M into delta T. Now we can also say that Q is equal to M into C into delta T, where C is the proportionality constant. And that is known as the specific heat capacity, because in all these three factors, M, C and delta T, M can change, delta T can change, but C of a substance is always constant. Okay, so therefore we take C as a proportionality constant. For converting this variation into equals to sign, we take C as a proportionality constant, and ultimately again we can, from here also we can say that Q equals to M into C into delta T. Okay, so these are the three factors on which heat absorbed or released by a substance depends. Okay. Okay. Now, out of all the common substance that we know, water has a very high specific heat capacity. The highest specific heat capacity is that of hydrogen, and that is in fact more or less 14,630 joule per kg for hydrogen. But we are talking about the common substance. Out of all the common substance, water has a very high specific heat capacity, and that is 4.2 joule per gram degree Celsius, or 4200 joule per kg degree Celsius. Now this means what? Specific heat capacity of water is 4.2 joule per gram degree Celsius, means what? 1 gram of water requires 4.2 joule of heat to raise its temperature by 1 degree Celsius, or we can also say 1 kg of water will require 4200 joule to raise its temperature by 1 degree Celsius, right? Now take another example, copper, having a low specific heat capacity. The copper, the specific heat is more or less about 0.4 joule per gram or 400 joule per kg degree Celsius. This means what? 1 gram of copper will require only 0.4 joule of heat to raise this temperature by 1 degree Celsius, or 1 kg of copper will require only 400 joule of heat. Whereas you can understand that 1 kg of water is requiring about 4200, whereas copper requires only 400 joule. So if you take suppose 1 gram of water and suppose its temperature is 10 degrees Celsius and you want to convert that 10 degrees Celsius water to 11 degrees Celsius, then how much heat you have to give? You have to supply 4.2 joule of heat. Then the temperature will convert from 10 to 11. Now with the same mass, or if I take the same mass of copper and with the same temperature 10 degrees Celsius suppose. Now for copper, for converting 10 degree to 11 degrees Celsius, I have to just supply 0.4 joule of heat. So you can understand that copper becomes hot much quickly compared to water. Understand? Now conversely, when that water want to cool from 11 degree to 10 degrees Celsius, it will release an heat of 4.2 joule. It will release 4.2 joule of heat. And similarly, when copper is cooled from 11 degree to 10 degree, it will release only 0.4 joule of heat. So from there what we can conclude? We can conclude that water takes much longer time to become hot and it takes much longer time to become cool, because it have to absorb more heat, it have to release more heat. So it takes time to become cool and it takes time to become hot also. Conversely, copper, it becomes hot much quickly and it becomes cool also much quickly. So that means you can say a conductor. When we say a conductor, generally a conductor always have what? A low specific heat capacity. A good conductor. So good conductor means its specific heat capacity is low, so that it can gets heated up much quickly and it gets cooled up also much quickly. Understand? Okay, so there are some natural consequences of high specific heat capacity of water. So just now we have seen what we told, that water has a high specific heat capacity. So that means what? Water takes much more time to become hot and it takes much more time to become cool also. So this has some natural consequence. You know that the climate near the seashore is moderate. Why it is moderate? It is due to land and sea breeze that you have studied also before. And that land and sea breeze, the difference is that the land becomes hot more quickly compared to that of sea, and so therefore there is a pressure difference and the hot air above the land rises up and the cool air from the sea takes its place. So that is sea breeze. And during night what happens? Water take much more times to become cool also. So during night what happens? The sea is more warmer then compared to that of land. Land becomes cooler more quickly compared to that of sea during night. So during night the air above the sea is warmer and it rises up and the land breeze occurs. So that is the reason. You can understand here also it is due to that high specific heat capacity of water. Similarly, hot water bottles are used for fermentation. Fermentation generally जिसको हम लोग बोलते हैं शेकाई करना. You can understand, I am just using some Hindi here, so you can understand कि जब हम लोग को कोई चोट उट लग जाता है तो हम लोग पानी का शेक देते हैं. That means we give fermentation with water. Why with water? No other liquid. Because water takes much more time to become cool. So water remains hot for a longer time. So we can use the fermentation for a longer time. Okay, so water does not become cool very easily. So we can use that hot water bottles for a longer time for fermentation. You also know water is used as an effective coolant. And therefore, it is used in the car radiator. Water is used also in the generator. So wherever there is hot heating processes going on, water is generally acting as an effective coolant, because water absorbs a large amount of heat without itself there is not a great rise in temperature because of high specific heat capacity. So it can absorb a large amount of heat, but instead itself does not get heated up, and therefore water is used as an effective coolant. And this one very important to understand, this farmer, especially in cold countries, when the weather forecasting is frost, a wise farmer generally log is filled with water. So that means when at night the weather forecasting is frost, suppose this is the the field of the farmer and the crops are there, okay. Generally the farmer fill the field with water, okay, with water in the evening just before the night comes, because the weather forecasting is frost. Now how this save that crops? Now suppose the surrounding temperature at night has dropped to say 10 degrees Celsius. So that means the temperature of the water present in the field, that is also 10 degrees Celsius. Now slowly as the night is approaching, okay, as the night is approaching, the temperature is falling, and when the temperature will reaches to 0 degrees Celsius, there will be a frost or snowfall, or the plants will freeze away, right? So that is frost. To stop that, farmer has filled his field with water. So what I told, suppose the surrounding temperature is 10 degree. So naturally the field temperature is also 10 degree. Now slowly the temperature is falling because night is becoming deeper and deeper. So it is becoming cooler and colder. So now the surrounding temperature has become 9 degree. So the temperature of this water will also become 9 degrees Celsius. And during this, how the water will release heat because its temperature is dropping. And how much it will release it? It will release at a rate of 4200 joule per kg. So that means 1 kg of water will release 4200 joule. But you can understand, in this whole field, naturally there is not 1 kg of water. There may be say 2000 kg of water or 1000 kg of water. So you can understand from 10 degree to 9 degree how much heat will be released by this water. It will be 4200 into 1000, because the mass of water is, I told you, 1000 kg. Suppose for 1 kg heat releases 4200, so this much heat will be released for 10 degree to 9 degree. So 1420000 joule of heat is released in this surrounding. Now again, when the temperature is now dropping to 8 degrees Celsius, this also 8 degrees. So another 421234 joule of heat will be released, and again from 8 to 7, again another 421234 this much joule of heat will be released, and from 7 to 6, again another 420000 joule of heat will be released. So you can understand, for every 1 degree Celsius drop, the heat released by the water is this much, okay. So it's 42 lakh joule, you can say, for 1 degree Celsius. So that means when it is reaching from 10 degree to 9, 9 to 8, 8 to 7, 7 to 6, 6 to 5 and 5 to 4, it is releasing 42 lakhs of joule for every 1 degree. And by releasing so much of heat, after sometimes the surrounding will become warm. The surrounding will become warm, and the surrounding temperature will never reach to 0 degrees Celsius. The temperature will never reach to 0 degrees Celsius because a lot of heat has been released by this water, and the surrounding become warm, and so that area, that portion of that field will not reach to 0 degrees Celsius, and the crop will be saved from the frost. Understand? So that's all. Okay, next is principle of calorimetry. Now it states that when a hot body is mixed or kept in contact with a cold body, heat starts flowing from the hot body to the cold body. Okay, that you know. The flow of heat continues unless the temperature of both the bodies becomes same. So that means the flow of heat continues unless the temperature of both the body becomes equal. And at this stage, the body is said to be in thermal equilibrium. So in physics, we say that the two bodies have reached thermal equilibrium. That means there will be no flow of heat after that, because the temperature of the two bodies become equal. And the total heat lost by the hot body is always equals to the total heat gained by the cold body. So whatever heat the hot body has lost, the same amount of heat is gained by the cold body. But what assumption we are taking? We are assuming that there is no loss or gain of heat in the surrounding. That means the system is totally insulated, so no loss or gain. So that assumption we are taking. So but practically, you know, some heat is always lost in the surrounding, but you know, ideally we say that the total heat lost by the hot body is equal to total heat gained by the cold body. So our assumption is there is no loss or gain of heat in the surrounding, and this is called principle of calorimetry. Okay. Okay, now let us mathematically understand that principle of calorimetry. Suppose we have a hot body and a cold body. The mass of hot body, mass, say it is given m1, specific heat capacity of hot body is C1, and initial temperature is say T1. Similarly, mass of cold body is given m2, specific heat capacity of cold body is given C2, and initial temperature is given T2, right? And suppose the final temperature, you know, when these two body will be mixed, you have seen in the principle of calorimetry, the flow of heat continues unless the temperature of both the body becomes equal. So when the temperature of both the body become equal, that we say as final temperature. Now let that final temperature be T. Okay, T. Now from here, since we have given all in alphabets, now we can at least conclude this, that T1 is greater than T2, because T1 is the temperature of the hot body and T2 is the greater temperature of cold body. We can also say T1 is greater than the final temperature T, and this final temperature is greater than the cold body temperature T2. Okay. Now, you know, according to principle of calorimetry, what you know? Heat lost by hot body is equal to heat gained by cold body. Okay, and you know, heat lost or heat gain is given by the formula what? Q is equal to m into C into delta T, where m is mass, C is specific heat capacity, and delta T is rise or fall in temperature, right? So heat lost by hot body will be what? Heat lost by hot body will be mass of hot body into specific heat capacity of hot body into fall in temperature. Now what will be the fall in temperature? The fall in temperature will be T1 minus T. And heat gained by cold body will be what? Heat gained by cold body will be the mass of cold body into specific heat capacity of cold body into rising temperature. right? Rise in temperature here will be what? T minus T2. So this is the mathematical deduction of principle of calorimetry. Now you can understand in every mixture sums, when you do a sum of this mixture, always do the sum in this way. Divide the question into hot body and cold body, plot the mass of hot body, specific heat capacity, initial temperature of hot body, mass of cold body, specific heat capacity cold body, initial temperature and final temperature. So plot this value. So you can understand there are 7 types of sums here, because there are 7 terms, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 and 7. Now out of these 7 terms, if any one term is unknown, you can get that. Understand? So this is how we do the sums of mixture, principle of calorimetry. So out of these 7 terms, any 6 terms will be given and you have to find that 6 terms, and your concept is heat lost by hot body is equal to heat gained by cold body, and out of these 7 terms, 6 terms will be given. You have to find the 7th term. So that means there are 7 terms which they can ask you to find. Sometimes they may ask you what is the mass of hot body, or they can also ask you what is the mass of cold body. Other thing they will give you. Sometimes they may ask you what is the final temperature. Sometimes they may ask you what is the initial temperature of the hot body, or what is the specific heat capacity of the hot body, or what is the specific heat capacity of cold body. So like this they can ask you. So you can understand, if you understand this concept, you can do all the sums related with principle of calorimetry. Okay. Now sometimes you may find some sums where it is given power, and you know power is equal to work done by time. So here you will use power is equal to total heat energy, because work means energy, heat energy by time. So if you have any sum related with power, use this concept, power is equal to heat energy by time, and therefore you can say heat will be what? Power into time. So if it is required, you can use this. So in some sums they may give you some power of a heater or a power of a say oven, and they may ask you different questions. So you can use this method. Okay. So this is the first part of calorimetry. In the next part, I will explain you about the latent heat and specific latent heat. Okay. That's all.